Look up at the moon on a full moon night. You will see a surface covered with countless giant meteor scars from billions of years ago. Then look down at the soil beneath your feet. With a peculiar innocence, we often believe that this blue planet somehow managed to slip through that devastating cosmic hailstorm. But what if I told you that right where you are standing, Earth was once bombarded with a force dozens of times greater than the moon? Then who, or what colossal force, cleaned up the evidence of those millions of impacts? When you walk along a quiet road in the early morning, looking at bands of mist stretching across the middle of a distant mountain, your mind automatically assigns that scene a quality: permanence. We look at lush green valleys, vast plains stretching all the way to the horizon, and we feel safe. A feeling of safety programmed deep within the genetic code of creatures living on land. We assume that the dense layer of rock beneath us is an impenetrable shield, a silent foundation that has been there since the beginning of space and time. But that silence is a lie, the greatest and most sophisticated lie this planet is performing for us. The journey of peeling back the layers that hide the truth of this planet requires a very slow rhythm, much like the way geological time itself has always operated quietly. If you also find resonance in scientific stories that delve deep beneath the Earth's surface like this, your support through subscribing to the channel will be the gravitational force that keeps us moving forward together to uncover mysteries that have never been told. Now let us return to the night sky. You see our only natural satellite, the moon. It hangs there silently, without even a breeze passing by to blow away a grain of dust. And because it has no atmosphere and no water, it preserves the entire memory of the solar system from its earliest days. The moon is like a recording tape that is never overwritten. Every time a space rock crashes into it, it leaves a dent. Millions of dents overlap one another, forming impact craters hundreds of kilometers wide. We look at that and often breathe a sigh of relief, thinking that little satellite sacrificed itself as a giant bulletproof shield, protecting Earth from the fury of the cosmos. Yet physics does not operate according to sacrifice or luck. It operates according to a far colder and more ruthless law: gravity. Earth's mass is 81 times greater than that of the moon. Its gravity is 6 times stronger. In deep space, Earth is not a small object hiding behind its satellite. It is a gigantic magnet, a bottomless gravitational funnel, constantly grabbing and pulling apart everything that passes through its orbital path. When enormous clouds of debris left over from the formation of the solar system drift through this region, the moon is only a tiny obstacle. Earth is the real target. Our planet did not slip through the cosmic hailstorm at all. It opened its gravitational arms wide and caught the whole thing. Try to imagine the scale of those events. They were not the bright little stones streaking across the night sky. They were gigantic mountains of rock with the mass of entire islands, flying at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. When a rock the size of a city strikes the ground, it does not simply create a deep hole. The pressure at the impact point becomes so immense that solid rock no longer shatters. Instead, it immediately behaves like a liquid. Rock surges into the air in gigantic waves, like water disturbed by a thrown stone, then instantly freezes into towering ring-shaped mountains. In only a few brief seconds, the atmosphere ignites completely. The temperature at the center of the impact becomes hotter than the surface of the sun. Based on mathematical models and the bombardment rates observed on the moon, astronomers know one thing for certain: Earth's surface should be a devastated wasteland, torn apart by tens of thousands of gigantic wounds. Wherever you cast your eyes today, you should see the broken rims of ancient impact craters rising on the horizon. And yet, when we flatten out the world's topographic maps and begin searching, what do we find? To date, human science has confirmed only about 200 meteor impact craters across the entire surface of Earth. 200, a number so modest that it is absurd. An unreasonable emptiness. Compared with the millions of craters and depressions on the moon, most of the rare scars we do find are relatively recent events on the scale of geological time, or they must be extraordinarily large in order to resist complete erasure. Where did the other tens of thousands of giant craters disappear to? Curiosity begins to give way to a deeper philosophical question. You cannot simply take a gigantic broom and sweep away solid rock formations, thousands of meters high and hundreds of kilometers wide from the map. Rock cannot simply vanish. Deep holes punched through the planet's crust cannot simply close themselves. That is when a chilling truth begins to creep into the mind. The flatness of vast fields and the gentle rolling forms of grass-covered hills are not natural conditions from the beginning of time. They are the result of a crime scene that has been deliberately cleaned so thoroughly that not a trace remains. Some invisible force, possessing unmatched power and endless patience, has been continuously wearing down, scraping away, and crushing every piece of evidence of this planet's violent past. And what makes this paradox even more haunting is not that the great scars have disappeared. What truly exceeds our imagination is that this ruthless erasing machine has never stopped. It is not an extreme event that happened once in the distant past and then ended forever. No, it is operating right now. The erasure is taking place all around you, in the clear air that you breathe, in the gentle breeze brushing your face on a late afternoon, and even in the most subtle sounds of nature that seem harmless. In a quiet valley in South America, the first raindrops of the season are silently falling onto a hillside, slowly soaking into the soft soil. And within that silence, the machine that erases traces begins to start up. Try placing a solid sandstone rock on a table and hanging a small container of water directly above it. Every 10 seconds, allow a single drop of water to fall onto the same point on the stone's surface. After one day, the stone will merely be slightly wet. After 1 year, you may see an extremely faint indentation, so small that a magnifying glass would be needed to notice it. But what would happen if that drop of water never stopped falling for 2 million consecutive years? In everyday human language, we often use stone as the ultimate standard, representing permanence. We say hard as stone and solid as bedrock. We carve enormous stone blocks to build castles, magnificent monuments, and statues, believing they will stand firm against every test of time. Yet that is only the narrow perspective of a creature whose lifespan does not even reach 100 years. When you expand the lens of time to the geological scale, where 1 million years is as brief as a blink of an eye, all of our intuitions about solidity are overturned. Before the endless patience of water and time, stone becomes the softest material of all. The atmosphere surrounding our blue planet is not merely a warm blanket or an invisible shield protecting life, as we often assume. From a geological perspective, it is actually a gigantic chemical factory, constantly producing a solvent capable of dissolving landscapes. When water vapor rises from the oceans, condenses into clouds, and falls back down, it never reaches the ground as pure water. During its journey through the atmosphere, every drop continuously absorbs carbon dioxide present in the air. This silent chemical reaction transforms the refreshing summer rain that you casually hold out your hand to catch into a weak acid, carbonic acid. And so a razor-sharp blade in the form of invisible drops of water began to be drawn across the surface of the planet. Let us return to the scene of the tens of thousands of giant meteor craters left behind after the era of cosmic bombardment. Try to imagine a crater hundreds of kilometers wide, with jagged rocky walls, sharp and towering thousands of meters into the sky. Its surface is cracked and parched by the brutal heat of the impact. When the first rain falls upon those ring-shaped mountain formations, a silent war begins. Water-carrying acid does not destroy rock through force, but through chemical decomposition from within. It seeps into the crystal structure of the rock. The hard minerals that make up the cliff faces begin to oxidize, corrode, and gradually transform into soft, pliable clay. What was once an impenetrable rock wall now crumbles into scattered handfuls of slippery mud. Scientists call this process chemical weathering, but water does not work alone. It has an equally ruthless ally: fluctuations in temperature. The drops of water that have not yet undergone chemical reactions find their way deep into tiny cracks in the crater walls. When night falls or winter arrives, temperatures drop sharply, and that water freezes. Do you remember the strange physical property of water? Water is one of the few substances on Earth that expands when it changes into a solid state. As water expands within the confined space of a rock crack, it creates enormous pressure from the inside, functioning exactly like iron wedges splitting stone. A small crack echoes through the night. The rock splits apart and shatters into thousands of fragments. Have you ever stood before a raging river, red with sediment during flood season, and wondered what that current is carrying? It is not merely ordinary mud. It is the corpse of mountains. The small streams that initially form on the slopes of an impact crater gradually merge into powerful rivers. They carry away weak clay layers and shattered rocks. They tear apart the surface of steep slopes to create deep valleys. The force of flowing water cuts through those gigantic ring-shaped mountain formations, dragging billions of tons of material down into the crater floor. Over tens of millions of years, the proud cliffs that once rose thousands of meters high are worn down and flattened into gentle hills covered with green grass. Meanwhile, the deep crater floor becomes filled with thick layers of sediment carried down from above. The erasure becomes so complete that if you stood in the middle of an ancient meteor crater today, you would never imagine any cosmic catastrophe at all. You would see only a fertile plain, dense forests, or a calm freshwater lake sparkling beneath sunlight. The atmosphere, the very thing that provides oxygen to your lungs every day, is also the most patient terrain-eroding machine. Under the effects of weathering and the mechanical erosion of water systems, the wounds on the planet's surface are continuously being leveled, as if Earth were using its own breath to heal and conceal the violent scars of its earliest past. However, if the mechanisms of this planet stopped with water and wind, the story would be far too simple. The erosion of the hydrological system, no matter how persistent, is still an extremely slow process. It is like trying to sand down the entire surface of a rough shell using a tiny piece of sandpaper. Water can wear down the peaks and fill in the bottoms of shallow craters. But for impacts of unimaginable power, blows powerful enough to punch through the outer crust and carve tens of kilometers deep into the earth, weathering alone is not enough. The blade of the atmosphere can only cut the outer skin. And this is where we encounter an even more difficult puzzle. The most brutal scars left by the universe have not only been erased at the surface, their enormous roots buried deep underground seem to have vanished as well, leaving no trace. But if Earth relied only on rain and wind, it would take billions of years merely to level half of those craters.
Clearly,
this planet is hiding another weapon, a gigantic saw blade with a far deadlier temperature. Close your eyes and imagine that you are standing at the foot of a colossal wall of ice as tall as a 50-story building, stretching endlessly beyond sight. That enormous mass of cold material weighs quintillions of tons, and it is not standing still. It is crawling toward you at a speed of 1 meter per day. Can you hear the growling coming from deep within it? That growling is not the sound of wind whistling through cracks. It is the groan of bedrock being crushed beneath a pressure far beyond human imagination. We often look at snow-covered mountain peaks on postcards and develop a chilling illusion of eternal stillness. We think ice is frozen, and therefore motionless. That is yet another deadly form of innocence. Human beings try to judge the scale of things with ordinary eyes. And this is where the story begins to depart from our intuition. Ice is not silent. As snow falls year after year, continuously accumulating for tens of thousands of years atop vast continents, its weight begins compressing the layers beneath. This immense pressure transforms the structure of water crystals, squeezing them into dense blue ice. And when that mass surpasses a critical threshold, gravity intervenes once again, pulling the entire enormous body forward. The continental glacier awakens. It is no longer a lifeless block of ice. It has become a geological monster, crawling forward and devouring everything in its path. Try comparing our lifespan with the breathing rhythm of the planet. A human life lasts only a few decades, enough to watch a tree grow. But Earth breathes through cycles lasting tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of years, cycles that science calls ice ages. Each time global temperatures fall, these gigantic white beasts rise from the polar regions and extend their immense tentacles over 1/3 of the planet's land surface. When a glacier 2,000 meters thick slides through a valley, what happens at the point of contact between its underside and the hard rock beneath? Ice itself does not actually carve the landscape. Its brutal secret lies in the boulders, meteorite fragments, and sharp stones it swallows during its movement. The immense weight of the glacier presses these rocks against the continental surface below with pressures reaching millions of tons. The entire gigantic mass of ice now functions exactly like a colossal sheet of sandpaper, grinding and polishing Earth's surface. Those jagged ring-shaped mountain formations created by meteor impacts, the formations that rain and wind would require tens of millions of years merely to wear down slightly, now stand before the brutal plow blade of the Ice Age. The enormous rock formations are stripped away layer by layer, The glacier crushes those sharp mountains into fine rock powder. Hundreds of meters of surface rock are completely removed during a single sweep. Any impact crater unfortunate enough to lie in the path of this giant beast is scraped clean from the map, leaving behind smooth bedrock covered with deep scratch-edges stretching for hundreds of kilometers. How many ice ages have passed since Earth formed? Dozens, perhaps hundreds. Our planet is like an oil painting whose surface layer is repeatedly scraped away by an invisible hand. Again and again, despite every effort by the universe to leave its marks. The vast flat wheat fields of North America or the northern European plains glowing in the summer sun are, in reality, the flattened scars worn smooth by the hungry bellies of ancient glaciers. The Ice Age truly was a perfect leveling machine. It explains why we do not see gigantic crater walls or vast deformed depressions scattered across the continents today. But think carefully about this. Both atmospheric weathering and the scraping action of continental glaciers ultimately affect only the thin outer skin of the planet. And so a razor-sharp blade in the form of invisible drops of water began to be cast down onto the surface of the planet. Let us return to the scene of the tens of thousands of gigantic meteor craters left behind after the era of cosmic bombardment. Imagine a crater hundreds of kilometers wide, with jagged rocky walls rising thousands of meters high and piercing straight into the sky. Its surface was cracked and parched by the brutal heat of the impact. When the first rain fell upon those ring-shaped mountains, a silent war began. Water-carrying acid did not destroy rock through force, but through chemical decomposition from within. It seeped into the crystal structure of the rock. The hard minerals that formed the cliffs began to oxidize, corrode, and gradually transform into soft clay. What had once been an impenetrable cliff now crumbled into slippery handfuls of mud and soil. Scientists call this process chemical weathering. But water does not work alone. It also has a ruthless ally no less powerful: fluctuations in temperature. The droplets that had not yet undergone chemical reactions found their way deep into tiny cracks in the crater walls. When night fell or winter arrived, temperatures dropped, causing that water to freeze. Do you remember the strange physical property of water? Water is one of the few substances on Earth that expands when it changes into a solid state. As water expanded within the confined space of rock fractures, it generated enormous internal pressure, acting exactly like iron wedges splitting stone. A small crack echoed through the silent night. The rock burst apart into thousands of fragments. Have you ever stood before a raging river, red with sediment during flood season, and wondered what that flowing current was carrying? It was not merely ordinary mud. It was the corpse of mountains. The small streams that initially formed on the slopes of meteor craters gradually merged into rushing rivers. They carried away fragile clay layers and shattered rock fragments, tearing apart the surfaces of steep slopes to carve deep valleys. The force of flowing water sliced through those enormous ring-shaped mountains, dragging billions of tons of material down into the crater floor. Over tens of millions of years, the proud cliffs thousands of meters high were worn down and flattened into gentle hills covered in green grass. Meanwhile, the deep crater floor was filled with thick layers of sediment transported from above. The erasure became so perfect that if you stood beside an ancient meteor crater today, you would never imagine a cosmic catastrophe had occurred there. You would see only a fertile plain, dense forests, or a calm freshwater lake sparkling under sunlight. The atmosphere, the very thing that supplies oxygen to your lungs every day, is also the most patient machine for gnawing away at landscapes. Through weathering and the mechanical erosion of hydrological systems, the wounds on the planet's surface are continuously being leveled, as if Earth were using its own breath to heal and conceal its violent primordial scars. However, if the mechanisms of this planet ended with water and wind, the story would be far too simple. No matter how persistent the hydrological system may be, it remains an extremely slow process. It is like using a tiny sheet of sandpaper to smooth the entire surface of a rough shell. Water can wear down the peaks and fill in the bottoms of shallow craters. But for impacts of unimaginable power, strikes with enough force to pierce the outer crust and carve tens of kilometers into the earth, weathering alone is not enough. The blade of the atmosphere can cut only the outer flesh. And this is where we encounter an even more difficult puzzle. The most brutal traces of the universe have not only been erased from the surface, but their enormous roots buried deep underground also seem to have vanished without leaving a trace. Yet, if only rain and wind were at work, Earth would need billions of years just to flatten half of those craters. Clearly, this planet is hiding another weapon, a gigantic saw with a far deadlier temperature. Close your eyes and imagine yourself standing before a colossal wall of ice as tall as a 50-story building, stretching endlessly beyond the horizon. That immense mass of cold material weighs quintillions of tons, and it is not standing still. It is crawling toward you at a speed of 1 meter per day. Can you hear the growling from deep within it? That growling is not the sound of wind whistling through cracks. It is the groan of bedrock being crushed beneath unimaginable pressure. We often look at snow-covered mountain peaks on postcards and fall into a chilling illusion of eternal stillness. We think ice is frozen and therefore motionless. That is yet another deadly naivety. Humans try to judge the scale of all things with ordinary eyes, and it is here that the story begins to depart from our intuition. Ice is not still. As snow falls year after year, continuously accumulating for tens of thousands of years atop vast continents, its weight begins compressing the lower layers. This immense pressure transforms the structure of water crystals, squeezing them into dense blue ice. And when that mass surpasses a critical threshold, gravity intervenes once again, pulling the entire enormous body forward. A continental glacier awakens. It is no longer a lifeless block of ice. It has become a geological monster, crawling and devouring everything in its path. Try comparing our lifespan with the breathing rhythm of the planet. A human life lasts only a few decades, enough to watch a tree grow. But Earth breathes in cycles, lasting tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of years, which science calls ice ages. Whenever global temperatures fall, these gigantic white beasts rise from the polar regions, extending their vast tentacles across 1/3 of the planet's land's surface. When a glacier 2,000 meters thick slides through a valley, what happens at the contact point between its underside and the hard rock below? Ice itself does not carve landscapes. Its ruthless secret lies in the boulders, meteorite fragments, and sharp stones it swallows during its movement. The immense mass of the glacier presses these rocks against the continent beneath with pressures reaching millions of tons. The gigantic frozen body then functions exactly like an enormous sheet of sandpaper, scraping and polishing the surface of the Earth. The jagged, ring-shaped mountains, created by meteor impacts, features that rain and wind would require tens of millions of years to wear down, slightly, now face the brutal plow of the Ice Age. Those mighty rock formations are stripped away layer by layer. The glacier grinds those sharp mountains into fine rock powder. Hundreds of meters of surface rock and soil are completely removed during a single sweep. Any impact crater unfortunate enough to lie in the path of this colossal beast is scraped clean from the map, leaving behind smooth bedrock, etched with deep scratches stretching hundreds of kilometers. How many ice ages have passed since Earth formed? Dozens, perhaps hundreds. Our planet is like an oil painting continuously scraped over by an invisible hand. Again and again, regardless of the universe's attempts to leave its mark. The flat wheat fields stretching across North America or the northern European plains, glowing beneath summer sunlight are, in reality, landscapes worn smooth by the hungry bellies of prehistoric glaciers. The Ice Age truly was a perfect leveling machine. It explains why we do not see gigantic cliffs or vast deformed depressions scattered across the continents today. But think carefully about this. Both atmospheric weathering and the scraping action of continental glaciers ultimately affect only the thin outer skin of the planet. Beneath thousands of meters of limestone, buried deep beneath the dark canopies of ancient trees and silent water-filled cave systems, magnetic data traced a gigantic circle, so perfect that it seemed unnatural. This invisible structure had a diameter of up to 180 kilometers. In nature, very few things create geometry so symmetrical and enormous. At first, the engineering team believed it was the mouth of an ancient underwater volcano. However, the geophysical data did not match the structure of ordinary volcanic rock. That magnetic circle resembled a faint shadow, a negative scar carefully buried beneath a thick cloak of millions of years of sediment deposited from the ocean. They had no idea that they had just stumbled upon one of the largest crime scenes in the biological history of the planet. The Chicxulub impact crater, where a space rock more than 10 kilometers wide permanently ended the reign of the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. You see, Earth has done an exceptionally good job of covering it up. If you walked through Yucatan today and happened to pass directly over the center of that ancient impact site, you would not see any gigantic cliffs rising into the clouds. There would be no immense valley for you to stand on the edge of and marvel at the brutal power of the universe. The surface of that region is flat. The atmosphere, the oceans, and life itself have tirelessly deposited soil and rock, leveled the landscape, and patiently grown a lush tropical forest over it to completely conceal the truth. So if the naked eye cannot see the deformation of the landscape and the recycling machine of plate tectonics, together with weathering systems, has erased every major physical structure, how can humanity be certain that it is a meteor crater? How do we bring ghost gas out of the rocks and into the light? And this is where the story of how we exposed this planet becomes a criminal investigation at the molecular level. Scientists realized that they could not search for giant meteor craters by looking at the shapes of mountains in satellite images. They had to search for the ghosts of impacts locked within the structures of mineral crystals. When a gigantic meteor slammed into the Earth at speeds of up to 70,000 kilometers per hour, it carried an unimaginable amount of kinetic energy that no volcano and no tectonic fault on the planet could replicate. The pressure, at the moment of impact, exceeded every limit that matter could withstand. A terrifying shock wave propagated through the bedrock at speeds faster than sound, compressing quartz crystals for a brief instant before releasing them. That extreme event did not shatter the quartz grains into dust, but it permanently deformed the internal crystal lattice, creating dense, sharp intersecting lines visible under a microscope. Science calls this phenomenon shocked quartz. Those microscopic lines are the confession of the rock. Even if the entire cliff has been scraped flat by the ice age, even if the crater basin has been filled with mud and sediment by rainwater, deep beneath the surface, those tiny quartz crystals still carry the scars of unimaginable pressure. No natural geological process within the Earth system, whether earthquakes, continental faulting, or even the most violent volcanic eruptions, can produce shocked quartz. That physical signature can only be created by the fiery collision of an extraterrestrial body. But shocked quartz is not the only invisible clue. When the planet's machinery hurried to clean up the crime scene, it accidentally left behind a layer of dull dust around impact craters such as Chicxulub and scattered across the globe at the same rock layer. Corresponding to that point in time, researchers discovered unusually high concentrations of iridium. This is an element that is extremely rare in the Earth's crust, but a very common component found in the asteroids of the solar system. By listening to subtle variations in gravity, reading the structures of deformed quartz, and tracking down scattered extraterrestrial elements, humanity gradually reconstructed the map of these dead lands. Look half a world away from Mexico, in southern Africa, and the planet's erasing machine had almost completely succeeded in its work with Vredefort. This is the largest and oldest impact crater we have ever known, formed more than 2 billion years ago. The impact was so immense that it gouged out a crater 40 kilometers deep and nearly 300 kilometers wide through the continental crust. Yet after 2 billion years of being carved by water, worn down by wind, and pushed around by tectonic plates, the entire original impact structure has completely disappeared. What remains today, scattered across the plain, is only a cluster of low circular hills rising from the ground. Ironically, they are not the rim of the crater. They are actually the deepest roots of the impact center. The bottom portion was pushed back up to the surface by the elastic rebound of the mantle after the tremendous shock. Earth tried to shave away the upper parts and pull up the roots of the wound in order to continue the cleanup, but it still could not dispose of the shattered crystal masses buried within. The ghost of the impact still lingers there, stubbornly resisting every attempt by time to erase it. The discovery of these hidden impact craters forces us to stop and ask a much broader question. Throughout this journey, we have been astonished by the fact that Earth established an entire system of weathering, glacial cycles, and plate tectonics of extraordinary complexity simply to destroy terrain. We see erosion as ruthless and the destruction of oceanic crust as extreme. Why must a gigantic rock floating in space maintain such an energy-intensive, violent, and endless erasing machine for billions of years? And there is one thing astronomers rarely mention when standing before a telescope. The very forces that so ruthlessly erased Earth's history are, strangely enough, the only prerequisite for the beating of your heart today. Look up into space once again and let your mind drift to the surface of the moon. For 4 billion years, it has been enveloped in an eerie stillness. There is not a single breeze, not a clap of thunder, and no crashing tides against a shore. The footprints left by astronauts in the gray dust several decades ago still remain there intact, sharp down to every ridge of their boot soles, as if they had been imprinted only a few seconds ago. That sight gives a sacred feeling of eternity, but hidden behind that perfect preservation is a cold truth. The moon is a dead world. It is a museum preserving the relics of the solar system, a place where everything has stopped flowing, where time has been frozen by the absence of all dynamism. Now bring your awareness back to the world around you. Listen to the howl of a tropical storm knocking down rows of trees. Feel the tremendous shaking of an earthquake tearing a city apart. Hear the cracking of a massive glacier collapsing into the ocean. Our Earth is never silent. It is a restless, noisy entity, constantly tearing itself apart. The atmosphere is always churning. Ocean currents never stop roaring, and the lithospheric plates continuously grind against one another. We carry an innate tendency to regard geological events, such as earthquakes, volcanoes, and violent storms as ruthless disasters, destructive forces that seek to sweep away peace. We look at ancient impact craters weathered away, scraped by glaciers, consumed by subduction zones, and we are astonished by the boundless destructive power of time. But have you ever wondered what would happen if we removed all of those violent forces? What would happen if Earth also chose to preserve every wound intact like the Moon or Mars? The answer would paint the darkest scenario you can imagine. For a giant impact crater not to be filled in by weathering, Earth would have to cast away its entire atmosphere and oceans into space, becoming a dry and barren sphere. For the deep fractures tens of kilometers beneath the impact center not to be filled and renewed by magma, the fiery mantle below would have to cool completely. The planet's nuclear core would have to stop spinning. The magnetic field that protects Earth from solar storms would vanish. All tectonic activity would come to a halt. A planet covered with a surface dotted by eternal scars would be the symbol of a geological system that has stopped breathing. Stillness is not peace. It is a tomb. On the contrary, the destruction, the erasure, and the constant cycle of tearing down and rebuilding that we have just witnessed are not a series of meaningless disasters. They are the vital heartbeat, the great self-breathing mechanisms that allows this planet to sustain life. Look deeper into how this ruthless machine operates in order to nurture the biosphere. Do you remember the cycle of plate tectonics, where old oceanic crust is subducted into the fiery furnace of the mantle? When that crust, filled with sediments and limestone, melts, volcanic vents erupt and release enormous amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This gas acts like a warm blanket, preventing Earth from falling into the state of a permanent snowball. But if volcanoes continuously released gas without end, the planet would become a blazing furnace like Venus, where water boils violently and life is roasted away. How has Earth maintained a perfect temperature for billions of years? It is precisely here that the ruthless blade of the atmosphere, the acid rains, steps onto the stage to perform its role. When rain falls, it dissolves the excess carbon in the air and it carries it down onto mountain ranges. The process of eroding rock does not merely flatten impact craters. It also locks carbon into decomposed minerals, washes them into the oceans through rivers, and ultimately deposits them on the seafloor in the form of coral and limestone. Then, hundreds of millions of years later, plate tectonics pushes that limestone back into the furnace, beginning a new cycle. The erasure of terrain turns out to be nature's greatest thermostat. It keeps this planet from ever becoming too cold and freezing solid, and from ever becoming too hot and evaporating all of its oceans. And what about the giant glacial beasts that grind continents to pieces? When they crush stubborn bedrock into fine powder, they are not simply leveling the landscape. That brutal grinding process breaks apart rigid molecular bonds, releasing phosphorus, potassium, iron, and a host of other essential minerals that had been sleeping deep within the Earth. When the ice melts, flowing water carries this nutrient-rich rock flour into the oceans, creating explosive blooms of trillions upon trillions of planktonic microorganisms. Those microorganisms, in turn, become the food fountains for the entire vast biological network of the planet. We should not mourn the disappearance of cosmic wonders. The erosion of mountains is the process of spreading fertilizer for the biosphere. The destruction of the lithosphere is the breath that regulates climate. Earth's surface constantly renews itself in order to provide inorganic raw materials for organic life. If this planet stopped erasing, nutrient cycles would break down, the oceans would be depleted of minerals, the climate would collapse, and humanity would never have had the opportunity to exist and ask questions about the impact craters that vanished. You and I, the solid bone structure that supports our bodies, the red iron flowing through our veins, every molecule that makes up our lives has been crushed, melted, vaporized, and reborn tens of thousands of times within the belly of this planet. We are not observers, standing outside the system. We are part of the flow of matter, continuously being reshaped by that erasing machine. The fear inspired by the destructive power of nature gradually transforms into a profound awe before the silent and invisible intelligence of the Earth system. If this planet is an entity constantly cleansing itself of the remnants of death in order to be reborn, then what role are we, who take pride in building a few concrete towers upon its thin skin, actually playing in this great cycle of reincarnation? Pause for a moment after this long journey through space and geological time, through patient acid rains, giant continental glaciers, and the blazing fires of subduction zones. As we stand at the end of this story and look back at the calm green surface of Earth, a strange feeling may come over your mind. The realization of just how extremely small we humans are compared with the immense scale of the planet. Human beings are strange creatures. We are deeply obsessed with leaving traces behind, from the murals in prehistoric caves to the towering pyramids standing in the desert, from sprawling concrete avenues to artificial satellites orbiting above. Humanity has always tried to shout into space a single message: we were here. We build cities, erect monuments, write pages of history, and assume that we are carving our names into eternity. We regard the preservation of memory and the conservation of ruins as sacred values, as proof of the great existence of a civilization. Yet when confronted with the calm ruthlessness of Earth, all of those efforts suddenly seems naive and fragile, like a sandcastle before the tides of the ocean. This planet is 4.05 billion years old. Throughout that immense span of time, it has endured wounds that reached deep into its bones. Cosmic impacts capable of effortlessly obliterating our entire civilization in an instant. Solid mountain ranges thousands of meters high, enormous basins as large as continents, once stood as the scenes of the most terrifying catastrophes in the solar system. And yet Earth dealt with all of those violent remnants with a composure that is almost frightening. It does not preserve them as metals of honor. It does not freeze them as lessons for future generations. It simply wipes the scene clean, strips away the upper layers, melts the roots, and transforms death and destruction into raw material for nurturing new life. This planet teaches us a profound philosophical lesson about letting go. It does not need the past to define itself. It continuously erases its own history in order to sustain life in the present. For Earth, nothing is eternal, and that very impermanence is the only driving force of evolution. If Earth had stubbornly preserved every scar like the moon, it would have become a dead planet billions of years ago. Skin covered in permanent scars is the skin of a corpse. Skin that is continuously scraped away, continuously melted, and continuously reborn is the sign of a living organism. From this perspective, we need to redefine the relationship between humanity and the natural world. We often appoint ourselves the masters of the planet, the pinnacle of evolution, and grant ourselves the right to interfere with natural cycles. But in reality, the entire history of humanity, from the dawn of primitive tribes to the age of artificial intelligence and space travel, occupies only a tiny fraction of geological history. If we compressed Earth's 4.05 billion years of history into a single 24-hour day, the appearance of modern humans would occur only in the final few seconds before midnight. Everything we consider great, every empire, every war, every great invention of humanity is in fact only a fleeting blink upon the thin epidermis of a gigantic moving entity. The calm and gentle green valleys and fertile fields that we cultivate today are not a tranquil gift prepared since the beginning of creation. They are a crime scene, still actively being cleaned by the erasing machine. We humans are merely fortunate beings who appeared during the quiet interval between two cycles of planetary renewal. We are building houses, schools, and hospitals upon a gigantic conveyor belt, slowly moving toward the lithospheric crematorium. And from that realization, a great and profound responsibility begins to weigh upon the shoulders of modern humanity. We cannot stop this planet from moving its tectonic plates. We cannot stop natural acid rain or prevent future ice ages from returning in the distant future. Those are large-scale physical laws beyond the control of any civilization. Yet what is concerning is that during the past few hundred years, humanity has been interfering with this erasing machine at a speed and intensity unprecedented in geological history. By releasing billions of tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, we are altering the chemical composition of rainfall and, artificially, accelerating weathering. By cutting down primeval forests, leveling mountains for mineral extraction, and altering the flow of major rivers, we are taking on the role of glacial monsters ourselves, stripping away the protective surface soil at rates hundreds of times faster than nature. We are forcing Earth's machine to operate under overload. Remember that the planet's self-renewal machine is a perfectly self-balancing system, but an extremely ruthless one. When one component of the system is pushed out of balance, Earth will automatically activate feedback mechanisms to restore order. If humanity disrupts the carbon cycle, alters the climate, and damages the surface biosphere, the planet will not die. Earth has survived catastrophes far worse than this many times before. It will simply activate a new cycle of erasure, one more ruthless and more thorough. It will use rain, wind, ice, and molten fire to scrape away every concrete tower and every trace of pollution left by human civilization, swallowing it all into the deep earth to be melted down and recreated as a pristine new crust. Earth will heal itself, but in the process of healing, it will not concern itself with whether humanity still exists. We are not Earth's ultimate purpose. We are merely a temporary form of life, sheltered by its continual transformation. Our crude interference with nature today does not truly harm the planet in the long term. It is only pushing humanity itself onto the list of things that may need to be erased during Earth's next cleanup operation.
Therefore,
The greatest lesson we receive from vanished impact craters is not fear of natural disasters, but humility. Humility to recognize our true place in the universe. Humility to understand that the solid ground beneath our feet is not a permanent possession, but a privilege borrowed from the cycle of matter. When you step outside after hearing this story, try looking down at the ground beneath your feet once more. Do not see only gray concrete or lifeless soil. Try to imagine the blazing fire churning dozens of kilometers directly below. Imagine shocked quartz crystals carrying the memory of a cosmic explosion from 2 billion years ago, buried beneath the ground where you stand, and feel a deep sense of gratitude toward this extraordinary machine. A planet that never stops transforming itself, never stops destroying terrain in order to create an atmosphere, create minerals, create water, and create every breath you take each day. We cannot leave an eternal mark upon a planet that continuously erases itself, but we can choose how to exist in harmony during the brief moment of our lives. Live in such a way that, when this great geological machine carries out its next renewal cycle, the memory of a species that knew how to revere nature and love its planet will be the last thing transformed into the womb of the earth, ready for a new and magnificent chapter of life. Yeah.